position. Annie Power at the last race down. Annie Power has gone but in front of the last length. Melanie Light
The first time, they're running up towards the finish, and he's mistaken the winning post. He's mistaken the winning post completely, Roger Lockwood, and Aintree.
For Archibald, Hardy Eustace defends his title, but Archibald is flattened out in second. Then he's followed down right by, he's beginning to come. He's drifting off the true line. He's flying, and this must be home. Shoulders are going to win his fourth Betfair Chase, and Cordo Star is still the king. Cordo Star wins.
Okay, hello and welcome to another episode of Tailed Off, number 10. This is a no-holds-barred podcast that dives headfirst into the wonderfully weird world of horse racing. We're here to guide you through it all for those that are looking to get into horse racing or those that have been in for a while. I'm joined with my good mates and Duncan, who are, I'd say, the experts. So today we are going to do a deep dive into 5 steps to picking a winner. So quite hopefully useful overview of what Ellen Duncan go through each weekend to pick up all those winners that you've seen. But before we get into that, we'll do a little review of Trainers in Form, see how we're getting on. We'll have an update on Callout, Elle's horse, see how it's going. Got some news, and then we'll get into the deep dives. Stay tuned for the top 5 steps on how to pick a winner. So, how are we doing, guys? Episode number 10.
All is good. All is good. Nice to see some sun
week.
outside for a change.
Yeah, and you're looking very smart as well, Duncan. You're dressed up, which is nice.
Coming in from the office, try and dress up for you guys, don't I?
You mean this isn't your job?
If only it was. Be leaving a very simpler life, I think.
It's shocking going in the office on a Friday, though. That's a cruel one.
I know, exactly. It was all right, to be fair. It wasn't too bad.
Massive respect for running back for this, so thank you. All right, let's get into Trainers in Form P&L then. Elliot, this is with you. So how are we getting on?
Yeah, I mean, we haven't had really a lot since the last week. Obviously, we said we were at the highest we've been since the podcast started last week, which is great news. Did put one up in the week at Taunton. Unfortunately, in the name of the podcast, it was tailed off.
Still running, is it?
But it was a double figure price. It was sort of a bit of a hopeful one. So it's knocked a couple of quid off, but we're still at 29.68 in profit side. So
still pretty good.
Too bad.
Yeah. Can't win them all, but
exactly. But that's we've only had 3 winners to get to that, and 3 places to get to that. So it shows you
3 winners, 3 places, and we're almost 30 up.
Yeah,
points up. So yeah, that's pretty good. That's quite interesting, actually.
All day.
I mean, hopefully it will stand the test of time over, let's say, a year, because that would give us the ups and downs, wouldn't it? So
we're still going in the year.
We have to be.
Nice and positive. There we go.
Let us know if you still want us to go on for a year. All right, let's get into how the horse is doing there now. So for those that don't know, as a reminder, Elle bought a horse a few weeks ago now. So maybe watch the previous pod. I think we did we shared a video, didn't we? And Elle did a bit of a pitch, a bit of an overview of.
But it worked.
What she's going to be doing. Yeah, has it worked?
We got some nibbles, yeah.
Oh, I got some nibbles. All right. We're doing business on this podcast now.
We'll shout out Philip, Laura's cousin, who does watch the podcast, who has kindly bought some. He's got 10% of the horse. And then
nice.
Alan, Laura's brothers, chipped in for him and his dad, good old Porrex. We've got the Rooney clan well involved in Callout, so it's going to be a few more
Tell
of us.
Mate, there's no pressure there, is there?
Yeah, we've got to deliver now.
There's going to be
great way to piss off the family.
Yeah, I was going to say there'll be shit flying your way if this doesn't go well.
When the first race gets tailed off, we'll be like,
yeah, right. Well, if it does get tailed off, then we'll just say, well, it's part of the tailed off podcast.
We can sponsor the horse.
Yeah.
But no, he's good. He just had a bizarre little injury he picked up literally when he was lying down in his box, went to get up and did the splits apparently, and managed to pull a muscle in his leg. But it's just a minor thing, so he's had a week of resting really this last week. But the trainer gave us an update yesterday, and he's flying along nicely, and he's going to start trotting this weekend before building up to sort of cantering and galloping. It's put us back a couple of weeks, I think, annoyingly, but we should be looking at maybe end of April, early May for a first run.
I mean, it's a good reminder. I think we were talking about this last week. Is that they're not machines, a small, that will fall or just jumping up. In a wrong way.
Most of the time they will injure themselves literally in their box or something stupid or in a field, not actually exercising. Probably the exercising is the safest point for them.
Well, I guess there's sort of natural instincts when they're running around.
Yeah, but yeah, we'll keep updated week by week on how he's getting on, and we'll get closer to a first run soon, which will be exciting.
Yes, nice. You got to tip your own horse now. That's the other complexity.
Get on, boys, get on.
Get on.
No
get
pressure.
On. Money coming in. All right, yeah, keep us updated, El, and if anyone else that wants more, I guess there's more shares available, is there?
Yeah.
Left?
If there's anyone else still interested, happy to have other people involved. It's going to be a great fun experience for the summer, so get stuck in.
And for those, in case they're wondering why we're not involved, is because I'm on a little break. I've just moved house, so buying a horse.
You just told me you got 120k in the bank.
Yeah. Can buy a decent horse for that. It could be a grade one winner.
5% at least on that.
In that case, there you go. Who needs another house, eh? All right.
I nearly had you over the line at Cheltenham. It was very close.
I was 10 pints down.
2 words, Matt. Royal Ascot.
2 words or an Ascot, yeah, that is better than owner's enclosure, to be fair. Maybe. Let's see how it goes. I'll never say never. All right, let's get on to some news then. So we've got a couple of points for news. Shall I start with you then, Duncan? You've got a few points on the news this week.
Yeah, can do. I've had a quick look, so apologies, I'm not more well prepared.
Doesn't sound like you.
I know, not at all. Obviously, Aintree starts next week, which very much looking forward to. I guess it's probably pretty much the last big jumps meet for the UK. Ahead of the end of the season. Looks like we've got Constitution Hill versus Lossiemouth in a rematch that we obviously had at Kempton before Cheltenham. So that's a nice match-up. So Constitution Hill won the same race last year. Currently trading at even money, and Lossiemouth at 2-1.
2 years ago?
So it'll be interesting to see. Is it 2 years ago? Oh, of course it did. No, it couldn't have been last year, so it must have been 2 years ago. So, yeah, it'd be interesting to see how Constitution Hill comes back from its fall at Cheltenham, which was devastating, as we well know. And Lossiemouth at 2-1. Could she serve it up to him again? But Hendo seems to think that Constitution Hill's in great form, so we'll see. And then the only other one that Hendo's got that he's mentioned is Lulamber, just again running on the Thursday. Both horses running on the Thursday. So Lulamber's running on Thursday in the 4-year-old juvenile hurdle. So it'd be good to see a couple of his powerhouses out again in full force for Aintree. So nice. Should be some nice racing.
He's such a Willie's absolutely done him and Hendo there again, isn't he? Because obviously after what happened to Cheltenham, he didn't really have a proper race, so you're kind of thinking he might turn up somewhere again at the end of the season. And they've always floated the idea of Punchestown with their top horses and basically never bothered going. They did send Sprinter Sacre there one year when he was basically unbeatable. And they said about going to Punchestown with Constitution Hill a few times, and it's never happened. And then after Cheltenham, it was like, oh no, we're going to go to Punchestown. I thought, bloody hell, that's brave, because you're going to take all the Irish on in their backyard. And then all of a sudden he's like, oh, actually, we might go to Aintree, and basically miss all the big clashes. And then Willie's like, well, I'll see your hand and I'll raise you a Lossiemouth and I'll send her over.
Yeah.
There's no way out for Henderson at the minute.
Yeah.
God.
Shit house.
Absolute shithousery. So I guess it's the run up to Aintree. So how many races? When is the Grand National Aintree?
Yeah, so there's three-day festival, Thursday, Friday and Saturday. Nice. And to be honest, some of the better races are on the Thursday and Friday. It's just obviously the National is the feature. But there's the Grade 1 Aintree hurdle for kind of champion hurdle horses. You've got the Stay and Chase, which is like a Grade 1 Gold Cup type race. Mm-hmm. And you've got a load of good races over fences. So it's a brilliant meeting for 3 days. Nice. We'll all be on ITV.
So next week we'll do a proper review, shall we? Preview of
Aintree, definitely. Yeah. We'll get stuck into that.
Yeah, perfect. Sounds good. We'll do it when the decks are out. What, Wednesday or something like that?
There he is.
Yeah, see, I'm not a newbie anymore.
Lacks racing knowledge.
Knows what he does.
And then, El, you've got another bit of news. What have you got?
Yeah, so hopefully you can stick the video up for those viewing on YouTube. We did discuss this, I think, a couple of times randomly on the pod, just how ridiculous this procedure has been over the years. And it unfortunately, for horse racing to try and paint itself as a modern sport, it doesn't do itself a lot of favours with stupid things like this, where basically we're all familiar with the term a walkover. We use that to describe kind of many sporting occasions, but the term actually comes from horse racing, where if all the other runners are pulled out of a race and there's left with one horse, he's obviously got no one to race against. The race still has to happen, but you would think he would just be declared the winner because, I mean, there's no one to beat. But they weirdly make the jockey go and get changed, get ready, get the horse saddled up, go around the parade ring, the jockey get on the horse go out to the course, and they don't quite go as far as make it race around on its own, which would be ridiculous. But they do dictate that they have to, once they've all jocked up and the horse is out on the course, trot all the way down to the 1 furlong pole. That's where they think is far enough, and then ride it all the way back so it crosses or walks over, because they tend to not be racing. They tend to literally be walk over the winning line, and then the stewards are like, okay, he's won it now. But if he didn't do that bit, they wouldn't give him the race, which just seems ludicrous. So you've got everybody standing around waiting for this to happen, and all the kind of preparation that goes into it to get the horse ready.
Money coming in for that then.
Yeah, that's a sure bet, surely.
Yeah.
But in the video that we'll post.
Okay, the Canter ears pricked up past the winning post to make sure he collects the prize. Looks like he's having a look at something. So
Sean Quinlan was actually, so obviously nobody knew this was going to be the last one. I think they just, I don't know whether his celebration kind of underlined the ridiculously of it, but sometimes when a jockey wins a big race, they'll give it the wave the stick around, or they give it a punch in the air. But he crossed the line, like literally walking. It was just like, way to the crowd, even though he just literally walked from 1 furlong to the winning post. So after that, I think the PHA were like, we got to stop this.
Yeah, come on.
So
it's like
done.
I don't know. It's like a football team forfeiting because they haven't got enough players, but then the other team playing, I don't know, from the halfway line.
Or go like the other team
minutes.
go and have to walk the ball in the net in an empty net to prove that they won. Just mental. But the common sense has finally prevailed after all these years, and they're now scrapping that as a thing, and it will just be declared the winner without having to do all that, which is good.
Interesting. So yes, okay. So I'm just thinking like what they put on the race card, won by a furlong.
Yeah, but I mean, to be honest, it can happen in advance of the race day, but quite often it's like, let's say the ground dries out and a load of trainers get a bit worried and they pull the horses out.
Yeah.
Then the horses drop out on the day, so the race card would have already had the other runners in it, but they just get pulled out late.
Interesting.
But
yeah, we'll share the video then. You can see how that looks. All right, good. Well, let's get into it then, guys, shall we? So, how to pick a winner, 5 steps. Now, if you watched previous podcasts, we did a deep dive on how to read the race card. So this is probably shortening that a little bit and focusing on the top 5 things. But as the guy said, there's so many rabbit holes with picking horses. So this is let's say a very sort of high level beginners 5 steps. If you literally just got, I don't know, 15 minutes or something, well, what do you look at? So let's start with number 1 then. So what is your first thing that you look at then, El?
Yeah, so I was trying to think of a name as an umbrella term for this category, if you like, but I think you've got to start with, some of this stuff is going to sound quite obvious, but I think it's better to just go through the absolute basics to make sure everyone's on the same page.
I think let's go through it. Like, what would you look at? Like number 1. Yeah.
So the number 1 thing, sounds quite obvious, is what is the race you're looking at? What type of race is it? Before you start delving into trying to pick the horses, you need to understand the conditions that you're betting in, basically. Because I know some people that might go just for a day out and stuff, you just bet on whatever the next race is. But if you can understand why there are different types of races and they are, then you'll see a pattern of certain types of races. It'll help you understand, how to approach them a bit more each time. I can see Duncan furiously typing as I'm reading this document. Like words are just magically appearing.
It's a magic trick.
You can't write the transcript. You just
I'm like, you
have to talk.
AI whilst he's doing it, he just doesn't realise.
You're making your own notes on the wrong Google Doc. Is that?
I feel like I'm in court.
Yeah.
It's not going in the paper, is it?
Quoted.
So talking about what type of race, so let's take it to its really basic form. So we'll start at the top, which is flat race or jumps race. And then on the flat, you've got 2 types where they could race. They race on the turf, which is grass, which is in the summer season. And they race on the all-weather, which is basically like kind of a sandy, dirty surface. And horses perform that's funny when I said dirty. Horses perform very differently on the grass and the all-weather. So it's important to know the difference because they're kind of widely different. And then when the jumps, we've been through this before, but you have a bumper or a national hunt flat race where it is a jumps race, but they don't jump any obstacles because that's British racing for you. A hurdle race and then a chase, which is over fences. So that's kind of like just in its bare bones. Then when you start to understand what the race type is, depending on whether you've confident about the flat or the jumps or the course that it's on, is that we have spoke about this in the handicaps pod that we did. So you will have novice races, which are for new horses kind of getting into whether it be the flat or the jumps for the first time. And they tend to be level weights. But then the majority of the races you'll see on the race card are handicaps, which I say we did a separate deep dive into on a previous pod. But then there are other things you can look out for. So you might have the graded races, which again we talked about in the race card section, where grade 1's being the top, class 1, grade 1, all the way down to sort of class 6. So that's quite important to know, okay, how good is the race? What sort of quality horse do I need to look for? And then you can have various other restrictions like age restrictions. So some might be for 2-year-olds only, 3-year-olds only, 4-year-olds only. Some might be open to all ages, that sort of thing. And then you can have restrictions around the sex. So there can be just fillies only or mares only for the ladies, and then you can have some that are just for amateur jockeys or just for conditional jockeys. So there are a lot of different elements into what kind of race you're actually betting on, and I always think it's important to start there. It kind of frames the rest of your decision making from that starting point.
And at this stage, you're not looking at any horses really. You're just looking at, you're not comparing. You're just finding out what horse it.
This is just the foundation. Yeah. So when we get to the later sections, it's almost like a funnel really. So you start at the top, and you basically, every time you go through this process, you're narrowing down by understanding the parameters of what is the race that you're looking at and where it is and what kind of distance, etc. You start to come down to what type of horse will I need to meet that criteria.
Yeah.
I'm probably making it sound quite complicated.
No. It's nice start. Yeah, nice start. And then Duncan, what have you got to add on that?
Yeah, sorry, I'm furiously typing whilst I was talking there. So I actually look at like the number of runners, which I guess fits under the race conditions. 8 or more runners is obviously you get 3 places. So if you were backing a horse each way, you get 3 places. Anything under that, so if it's 7 to 5 or 5 to 7, sorry, it's only 2 places, and then from 1 to 4 runners is you got the one as win only. I tend to stick away from anything that's kind of under 3 places if I can, and massive fields obviously. Unless you're on a specific booking that's offering you more places, I just think it's easier.
Saying that's a very good point. Just worth saying as well, if it's 16 or more, you get 4 places.
Yep.
A standard thing, but you will find that a lot of bookies and things online will probably offer you more places for races that they don't have to, but they will. I'd normally try and stick to like 8 to 10 runners maybe, just as an easy rule of thumb for people, because it can just shorten down how many races you could be looking at.
Yep. Okay. Good. Yeah, that's good tip. I learned that the hard way when you're doing each way bet and there's you're paying for two places.
Yeah. It can work.
Okay,
I'm not saying it's not, but just as a rule of thumb, I think for people that are just starting out, probably aim for 8 to 10 runners maybe.
Yeah, that's fine.
Because if there's 5 runners, I don't mind betting each way actually sometimes, if you can get a good
that's true.
price.
Yeah.
But if there's 7, I know it doesn't sound like many more, but 7's a shocking. Yeah. 8's a great number because it's the lowest you can get 3 places. So there's less work.
You're leaving odds.
Percentages are in your favour a bit more. Yeah,
exactly. All right, good. So we looked at the conditions, looked at the runners. Second thing then, what would you say, El?
So this thing sounds pretty basic, but it's really, really important. So once you know what kind of race is it, handicap, is it a novice, is it jumps or flat, etc., you need to know what distance it is, very simply. So on the jumps, they start at 2 miles. It's kind of what they call the minimum trip. That be that over hurdles or fences. Then they generally go up to around 3 miles, but you will get, particularly over fences, you will get some marathon stay-in chases that go beyond 3 miles, get up to 3.5 miles. And of course, the Grand National itself is 2.5 miles, 2.5 furlongs. Used to be 4.5 miles, that's 2 laps of Aintree basically. It's
Aintree, that's a beast of a race course as well.
But again, it's so important because are you basically in the real, and then on the flat you've got kind of sprint trips from 5 to 6 furlongs, and then because some courses, one of the great things about British racing is all the courses are like idiosyncratic. They're not kind of standardised. Like if you look at America or Australia, they're just oval tracks, flat oval tracks, and it's quite boring because they're all the same. But in Britain, you need to understand what's the course like. So some of them have weird distances, so they might have 6.5 furlongs or 7 furlongs, but generally you'll get your sprint trips over 5 or 6, your kind of mile races, and then middle distance races, 1.2 miles, and then you get your stay-in races for about 6 furlongs, 2 miles, and the Ascot Gold Cup is 2.5 miles, which is quite unique for a flat race. But basically what you're trying to do in that, looking at what the distance is, do I need a speedier horse or do I need a stamina horse? And if you're looking at, if a race is a stamina race, I always place a lot of more emphasis on horses that are proven at the distance. Whereas I think at the shorter trips, more horses can probably get away with it a bit more.
And that's when you say, like, oh, she's a stayer.
Yeah.
Like you're referring there to a horse that can stay on.
Yeah.
It sounds obvious, but like stay on and go
Yeah.
a longer distance. Yeah.
And that's what they say. That they generally mean are quite slow, but they'll keep going at it all day.
They keep going forever, yeah.
A bit like myself, to be honest. I do a bit
Slow
too
steady
quickly.
wins the
Just
race.
like Laura.
Yeah.
Stays on.
Yeah.
Stays on well. Okay. Anything else apart from that to add, Duncan, on that?
No, I think it's pretty much summed up well there. So yeah, nothing to add.
Oh, fun fact actually for those who don't know, I thought you were going to ask me this actually. In a furlong, there are 220 yards, and in a mile there are 8 furlongs. So that's how you understand that.
Yeah. Do you know what? Like that's just completely gone out of my head instantly after you saying that. So yeah, that's confusing. Why do they need to have a separate? I guess that's just why can't they just use kilometres?
I guess because it started 300 years ago, so that's what they had then.
So did a lot of things though.
In Europe, they use meters and kilometers, and I literally see 1,000 meters on a thing, or like 1,200 meters, and I'm like,
How far is that?
what?
No idea. How many
So
furlongs?
speaking
How many
French, yeah.
furlongs?
Yeah. Not a clue.
Yeah, okay, that's actually quite a good point. Yeah, we should put that up. Okay, good. So race conditions, distance, and then third point. Then what we got? What have we got? What you're looking at?
So I put up a little screenshot from the Racing Post.
Yep, we'll put
which
that up.
I recommend people going on, because basically you can type in any course in the country, and if you get the physical Racing Post on the day, we'll have it printed on the race card. But you can view them all online, and I just find it's a real helpful way if you don't know what a course looks like to see the map and the layout. You can see where all the starting points are. You can quite important thing is the undulation, so you can see the highest point and the lowest point of the course. So we'll put that up on the video. But yeah,
Which one is that we put up? Sorry.
Where it says course map.
Yeah. What course is that you've?
Sorry, which course is that? That's Goodwood.
That's Goodwood. Okay.
Yeah,
Quite ahead on that.
It's quite a good example because look at it, it's mental. And you can see they have some races going the wrong way. If you look where the winning post is, they start at the bottom where they'll finish coming the other way. They go up,
nice.
do a left, do a loop round, and then it's called a switchback track, and then come back down the other side. Which is quite fun.
Interesting.
Yeah, and so Goodwood's a really unique course for that respect. But yeah, once you've kind of got the race, what kind of race you are, how far is it? One of the next key points is what is the ground, and alongside that, I would say what course is this race taking place on? As I literally just said, no courses are the same really in England, which is a great thing, but it means that some horses perform better on certain tracks than others. So we'll start with
the winner a lot harder, doesn't it?
It does, but that's what I like about it, to be honest. Because if it was all the same sort of tracks, that wouldn't even be on this list. It wouldn't be a factor because they're all the same.
And would you say you mentioned the all-weather tracks, so the ones that are like sand, like gravel, not gravel, but like sandy.
Yeah.
Will gravel be interesting? Gravel race, but they are more similar, aren't they? No matter where they are.
They tend to be. Oh god, you're going to get me going down a rabbit hole.
No, okay, sorry.
Oh, stick away from it.
I'll try and keep it really brief. So there used to be 3 types of surfaces on the all-weather in England. Shut up, David Brent.
Nibble away. Come on.
Different horses,
Carry
different
on.
needs.
There used to be Polytrack, which is at mainly at Kempton and Lingfield. What's the other one? Tapeta, which is at Wolverhampton and Newcastle and Southall. But Southall used to be a different surface again, which was called fibre sand, which was like deep sandy sort of artificial surface, which like basically 90% of horses hated. So it would just be the worst racing you've ever seen. They would be strung out like washing coming around the bend. So they scrapped that.
Handicapper's nightmare.
Yeah, exactly the opposite of what he wants. So now there's 2 surfaces. So you've got Polytrack and Tapeta. I don't see that there's a massive difference between them, but clearly horses will prefer one or the other. So if you see a race at Lingfield and then they go and race at Wolverhampton, just because it's both all weather, don't expect the horse to perform exactly to the same degree. Newcastle has a 1 mile straight. So that's very unique compared to Lingfield, and Wolverhampton, which is really tight and turning. And then you've got the likes of Kempton, which is actually right-handed. So that's one thing I should have said as well, actually. Some horses prefer going left-handed, some prefer going right-handed. So
we're not making it easy, are we? Right.
Just be getting people into this, not turning them away.
Yeah, exactly, yeah. Maybe we should just call this pod "It's Impossible to Pick a Winner."
Yeah.
Unless you
well, I'm sorry, it's not easy.
Yeah, do you know what though? It's a good point. It's a good point because like everyone gives you abuse when you share tips and like, oh, that didn't win.
Yeah,
it's like okay, but it might do another day or another course, or like there's so many variables. All right, Duncan, you got anything to add on the ground and course?
Yeah, I think one of the things that Els kindly mentioned, which I'll kind of latch onto, is actually the kind of like the actual ground condition itself. So obviously, depending on the weather during the week or weeks leading up to a race, if it's been rainy or if it's really sunny, the ground can move from kind of like good to like firm ground is kind of the hardest ground you're going to get, which you won't see on jumps courses. You'll only tend to see that, I think, potentially on, I think Bath is probably one of the only courses I think you really see firm ground. Just because they don't have the water particularly often, and I think the water, if they do get any water, it kind of just goes straight through the surface. But obviously that can factor in to a horse. So I'd be looking straight away to see what kind of ground conditions has the horse won on previously, just to see was it good to soft, heavy. It's normally quite helpful if you know on the Racing Post app on the actual day of the racing or even a day beforehand, it will kind of give you an idea as to what the ground conditions are. So if, for example, if it's heavy ground, you want to look for heavy ground horses, one on heavy, and there aren't like hundreds of them. So it can be easier to find horses when the ground is heavy that have gone out and done it beforehand, because some horses just load it. So yeah, I think that's a good one to call out.
I would say that's one of my kind of favourite punting angles actually, is when let's say, like, you could do it in reverse, but let's say this time of the season when the ground has now dried out rapidly, you've had horses racing against each other on bottomless winter ground all season, so that a particular horse's form might not look that good, but then it's actually been waiting for spring ground, and therefore the price that you've been asked is probably double figures. So I did it recently at somewhere like Taunton or Fontwell. I just went through and was like, I literally, rather than look at anything else, just shortlisted horses that are proven on really quick ground and backed them whatever price they were, and it was actually quite profitable doing that. So interesting. And the same way in the winter, if the ground goes quickly to heavy, as Duncan said, there aren't that many that would actually appreciate it, so it's a lot easier to rule horses out when you're trying to pick a winner. Yeah,
that's interesting. So we've done race conditions, haven't really looked at horses apart from the total number of runners. Looked at distance, haven't really looked at horses yet. Looked at ground and course. Now we're starting to look at the actual horses. So fourth point then, horses form, I guess.
Yeah, and this again is quite a broad term because there are loads of different avenues you could squirrel down. But as you rightly say, the most important thing is what is the horse? What's the information that we've got on the horse? But you can't decide a horse until you know the bits previously, because you don't know what sort of horse you're looking for. So now you know where it is, what distance it is, what type of race it is, what the ground is, etc. Now you're looking at the horses individually. You're looking for horses that meet the kind of selection criteria that you've kind of gone through to this point. So when I say horses form, obviously that is quite broad, but can be quite simply its most recent runs, because if you see, particularly over jumps, a lot of letters like pulled up, unseated or fell or refused, etc., that's probably not a horse on the top of its game. But at the same time, it doesn't just mean you're looking for ones only, because we've discussed the handicap mark before, and if it's a handicap and they've won, they will keep carrying more weight in the next race. So it's unfortunately not a cheat code to just look for ones and think job done. Yeah. Because if that was the case, everyone would do that and the favourites would win every race. But so you're looking at the recent runs, you want to look at the handicap mark, which, go and watch the previous podcast to see if it's performed well at similar marks in the past, or it might be the case that actually it's still about £5 or so too high versus what its actual horses. They're not machines. Once they've got a ceiling, that's kind of it. They don't suddenly, if it's a 5 or 6 year old, they don't suddenly improve by £10 or £20 overnight. They kind of average around the same sort of mark. So that's quite important to know. But then you can look out for other things. So you obviously want to know the distance record. Because we've just gone through, like, what is the distance of the race? If it's a stamina race, has a horse got proven stamina? Obviously, it doesn't mean that horses that haven't got proven stamina can't win stamina races. They might not have attempted yet. And one good thing the Racing Post will do, they'll tell you what's the record like at the course. Is it like 1 from 3 or something like that? And the same at the distance. So if they've not even attempted the distance, I would probably say don't just rule it out because it's not tried, because it hasn't proven that it can't do it. So that's another factor. And sort of maybe have a look at how long it's been since this last run. Because if you get to, let's say now we're getting to the start of the flat season, the turf season, you're looking at horses that might not have run since October. And a lot of those horses will often need a run or two to get up to full fitness. But at the same time, if you look for a horse's form, and whenever you can see a gap in months between its runs and it's performed well, then that means it is a horse that can perform off after a break. So it's not necessarily looking at if it's had a gap, don't back it. It's like, what has it done after that gap? Or a horse might do well without any break. Yeah,
and you
exactly.
go, oh, running quite a lot of runs.
Yeah.
So you mentioned there's a few horses that they literally race once a year. They target one
Yeah.
race and they win it, and then it's like
Exactly.
they go away for a year.
Exactly, and that's, I guess, one constant theme throughout this. These aren't binary outcomes. There's not one rule right for every horse and wrong for every horse. It's kind of independent on horses. It's understanding what the factors at play that you can go through. But I would never. I mean, there's times where we've spoken about jockeys, and I say I would never back that jockey, but jockey wouldn't have a job if he didn't win races. So, or I'd never back a horse at that course or something like that. You can't really draw red lines in punting. You have to be prepared to consider everything, really.
And at this stage, we're not also taking into account the prices, because I think you said to me once, which is you should only look at the prices towards the end, or you should look at all of these different points and then figure out what the price should be of that horse that you like. And I think that's because you do get skewed by prices, really, don't you? Because
Yeah, I mean, the problem is,
at the end of the day, you're trying to beat the market a little bit, aren't you? You're
Yeah.
trying to find something that's a little bit on the better number figures, better odds, but everything we said is checking out.
Exactly, and I think that's one of the things. It's yes, our title of this pod is how to pick a winner, but really it's how to win in general,
Not pick a loser.
But by winning, it means you have to be betting on prices that aren't even money every time, because you'll get poor very quickly. And as you say, you need to beat the market.
I'd add to what Els kind of said there as well. Like, it's almost like you want to kind of. If I look at a full race card, say it's like 7 races or something like that, I don't necessarily mean I'm going to back a horse in all the 7 races. I'm going to look at races, like say if it's, say for example, it's a second season, like flat races, Els said. They're potentially all of the horses will not have had a run in like 6 months, but they won't have any previous form of having a gap in the time between like last season to this season. So I'm like, well, I've got really nothing to go off. If you've got like no evidence to go on really, then don't bother backing anything in the race. It's just not worth it unless you've got like decent amount of information to go off. Don't bother. That's just kind of how I look at it. Just save your money for a race where you think, okay, I've got enough information here. It's relevant. I can understand what I'm looking at here. I can back something like with fair confidence rather than just kind of going off hope.
It's a good point, because like both of you have said a few times, I don't really fancy anything, in this race. And I'd be like, oh, okay, fair. Like if you don't fancy it, then I probably don't either. But, so yeah, it's a good point actually.
That's it. I mean, if you want to make money off racing, you should have less bets, not more bets. And strike hard when you like Duncan said, when you think you've got all the pieces of the puzzle together, that's when you sort of strike and punish them. But if you try and spread that thinly throughout a whole race day, you're not going to come out on top, really.
No, you're not.
100%.
No. Well, you're trying to build confidence, really, aren't you?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, good. Anything else to add on the form, Duncan? Is that pretty much everything?
No, I think summed up quite well there. As well as there was potentially one other thing. I think when did he's kind of said when did the horse last run. The first thing if you're looking, just literally checking a quick scan through the race card, the first thing I would always pick up on, and Elle's already mentioned it, is the course and distance record, because you'll see like a CD next to the horse's name. That if I'm going to kind of I have a starting point, that's where I'd kind of look at, has the horse run and won at this course and distance beforehand? And if it has, okay, start from there and then work your way through.
Yeah, and they do highlight that, don't they, on the race card quite easily, so it's a good thing to start with. Okay, and then final thing then, what we looking at, I mean, it has to be number 5 really, based on what we focus on in the pod every week.
I couldn't leave this out. So this is trainer form. I mean, the 5th spot could be open for debate. You could put jockeys in there. You could they could put various other things in there.
Well, there's no 200 things you could put in there, I guess.
Yeah, I know. I do think push comes to shove. I think the trainer's obviously quite important. I mean, that is the person that produces a horse and gets them to the races. So the horse can't do it for himself, unfortunately. So the horse has to be the bigger part of the equation, and the jockey is another part of the equation. But the trainer is really significant. And as we were saying earlier, I've had certain trainers where I sort of dislike them, so I might not bet on those horses, but you really need to be quite objective when it comes to trainers and just look at their stats. Now, some trainers will have a particularly good record at certain courses, and that's also something worth looking at. And I probably would say that if a trainer was, in inverted commas, out of form, i.e. hadn't had a winner for a few weeks, I wouldn't ever let that stop you from backing a horse. If you think everything else ticks all the boxes, you might just have to take a bit of a chance on the trainer element. But it certainly is very helpful when they've had a few wins or places recently. And as we said I think it was in the race card section, if you go on the horse on the Racing Post app, you'll see in the top right hand corner the trainer stats for the last 2 weeks. So you'll see how many winners they've had from how many runners, and they'll get a percentage for that. So what I'm trying to say is don't put all of your stock on that as a factor,
No.
but
Follow
if
the steps before,
we've,
and if they all
we've
check
proven
out,
yeah,
if they all
that's
check
like the
out and
final
then
tick. Yeah.
that checks out, then actually that makes a good decision point for you.
Here's an example.
Yeah.
So for example, if I like two horses almost exactly the same and all the other factors in a race, and one trainer was showing good signs of form and the other one was out of form, that would swing it for me.
Yeah.
But
You wouldn't back both.
I mean,
I can't find me.
back them all, you can't lose.
Exactly. Best thing to do, check out how many runners are, put a bet on all of them, and you know.
Great question, Matt. I love that.
Been done there.
No, I'm joking. And Duncan, trainers in form. I guess you'd also do the same.
Yeah, a point that Elle made actually on that. So like top course trainers. So one of the things, if you have the Racing Post app, if you go on to the race day that you're on at the top of the page, so under racing, which is at the bottom, you click on that. And then at the top left-hand side of that is a thing called signposts. If you click on that, it gives you, it's already done the statistics for you. So I think it's the third option down on there. It says top course trainers. So you can click into that and it'll actually tell you how many wins that trainer has had from how many runners over their entire career, I think it is. So, that's a good thing. I do normally check that just to see. So I think it's quite a valid thing to have a look at.
All right. So cheers, guys. So that's the top 5 steps how to pick a winner or just to win. Win against the odds, as we mentioned. So what we'll do is maybe we'll do a deep dive on certain areas if people are interested. So let us know in the comments if you want to dive into a bit more detail. As a reminder, we did do a how to read a race card, how to understand handicaps, and a few other sort of Q&As that actually does describe some of those points. So if you don't know, what
And
handicap
trainers
mark
in form.
means, and obviously trainers in form as well, which is one of our early
Number
ones.
one.
So do go and watch those, and that goes into a lot more detail. But I was thinking this week it'd be nice to do sort of a top 5 things to look at, especially with Aintree and a few other race meets coming up in the summer coming up as well. So cheers guys, that was useful. And then you get into the rabbit holes, and then before you know it, it's been a day and you haven't found anything.
Exactly.
Like 15 years of my life have flown by doing this.
Before you know it,
What
15
happened?
years. I tell you what, it's paid off now, mate. After Cheltenham,
laughing now.
Awesome. All right, let's have a quick preview of the weekend. So we got Doncaster and Kempton, and then we'll wrap up and get out of this. Duncan, let's start with you. Kempton, you got a little tip?
Yeah, I've scrabbled together a couple here.
Scrabbled.
So I was a bit of a loss. So the first one I've looked at is at Kempton in the 2:05, so the opening race, Golden Rule. So it's actually something we've mentioned earlier on as part of this whole kind of finding a winner. So he's won over course and distance on the card last year, in different race, but on the same card, and he's also won after a break previously. So there is I think he hasn't run for 168 days, but obviously that doesn't look like to be an issue. He's been there, done it, got the t-shirt. Trainer had a winner in the week as well, so that's obviously a positive, and looks to be £1 above his last winning mark. Currently 6-1. Little each way in the opening race, 2:05.
Nice. Lovely. So that's course and distance. Yeah, okay, good. Nice. 2:05. And you got another one?
Yeah, I know. This is literally just picked on more sentiment, as the wife is called Rosie. So don't tell Rosie in the 3:20 at Utah.
Story of your
Currently
life.
3-1.
Yeah, story of your life. Don't tell
Put your bollocks on it. Yeah, but it's trainer informed. So Jeremy Scott is 2 from 4, currently 50% strike rate. So has a good potential of carrying a low weight as well with Rex Dingle on board.
Lovely.
Your dingle dongle.
Dingleberries.
Good to know that I laughed at that as well as Elliot. Oh, you've also got one for Kempton in the 2:40.
Yeah, so I'll have to credit the old man Dave for this. He's put me onto it,
Up the Dave.
and then I've ended up nicking the price before he was able to get on it.
You wanker.
He literally was
You
2 minutes after me, and the price I snaffled it.
Wow, that quick.
But yeah, I'll make the case for it. So the horse is called Killybegs Warrior. Used to be trained by Charlie Johnston. Has now moved over to George Baker. And talking of trainers in form, he's had 2 winners from 4 runners in the last 2 weeks. Very much in form. He tends to race his horses in Bahrain quite a bit, so he's had a little bit of a racing over there. But he's back in Britain now to run at this race in Kempton, which, funnily enough, this time last year when he was trained by his previous trainer, he was a very close second off £11 higher in the handicap. So he's dropped a mammoth amount.
Wow, that's
with a
huge.
new trainer, which can perk a horse up. The trainer's in form. I did get on at 20-1, not to do a Duncan, but he is currently 16-1, and
Wow.
I would
Took
say
the
get on.
16s, live price. Took the 16s.
Get on now.
I think he's coming from twice as well, so the money is coming in.
Wow, okay. Nice. And then lastly, Doncaster on Saturday.
Yeah, so this has been a bit of a project since we were at Cheltenham. As we covered in the podcast, I think last week, Duncan and I met Jack Morland, who is now my racehorse trainer, and his good friend Tommy Allen, who is basically assistant trainer to the Wathnan Racing Ownership Group in Newmarket.
Assistant to.
Yeah.
Sorry, I couldn't resist. That was a
To
good
the regional trainer.
reference.
And basically they were chatting about the flat season coming back up, and they were talking about the Lincoln. Now the Lincoln is, so tomorrow is the first day of the turf season, and it starts at Doncaster, and the Lincoln is like a real big handicap that's been run for many years, and it's a bit of a minefield because, as Duncan said, a lot of the horses would have had a break and this is their first go of the season, and it's usually on bottomless ground, but to be fair, because of the dry spring we've had so far, it probably won't be too bad tomorrow. But they basically, because I'm talking to the guy that is literally training the horse, and they were absolutely so confident that this horse was going to win the Lincoln. I'm thinking, bloody hell, I'm halfway through Cheltenham and 6 pints deep of Guinness. I can't be thinking about the bloody Lincoln. But I did make a little note of it.
He's
So
always on.
right, I need to
He's
come back
always
to
on.
that.
He's always on. You look at it in the morning and you're like, what's that?
Yeah.
Lincoln, where?
Are you sure?
And they said the horse is called Midnight Gun, and I just basically, I mean, you go through its form, you can see it's quite a progressive horse. He has improved since being gelded. He's now a 4-year-old. He has gone quite high in the handicap, which makes me worried. But it was this tip is literally based on inside information of a trainer that said that's so. I mean, Duncan, you heard it for yourself. I mean, they were so bullish about this horse. Now he was put into second favourite around 6-1 when the races were declared yesterday. He has drifted out a little bit to 15-2, but I think that's quite a nice price each way. Midnight Gun in the 3.35 at Doncaster.
Tommy had even said, I think himself, they didn't think much of the horse as a 3-year-old. Thought he was pretty skinny, didn't have much to him, but apparently he just bulked up so much over the last year. So, he's been on the gains.
Little protein shakes.
Fingers crossed.
Nice.
It'll be a nice double.
How do you bulk up a racehorse? Just feed it more.
Yeah.
Normally, yeah.
Just feed it more protein.
Yeah.
All right.
Get me to sit on it. That'll strengthen it up.
Right, cheers guys. So that's a wrap. Thank you for doing the deep dive and the preview. Let's see how we get on. So next week then we'll do a preview of Aintree and obviously the Grand National, so tune in for that. And let us know what you're liking about this podcast. Drop us your questions, your comments. If you like it, please share. And also subscribe, so you can watch us on YouTube, you can listen to us on Apple and Spotify, and you can message us on tailedoffpod@gmail.com. So cheers guys. Until next time, have fun out there. Race hard, race smart, and try not to be tailed off. Cheers, guys.
Cheers, guys.
Cheers.
Position. Any power at the last race down. Any power of Scotland in front of the last length. Melanie Long.
Right the first time, they're running up towards the finish, and he's mistaken the winning post. He's mistaken the winning post completely, Roger Lockwood, and Aintree.
From Archibald, Hardy Eustace defends his title, but Archibald is flattened out in second. Then he's right right, he's beginning to come. He's drifting off the true line. He's fine. Now this was going to win his fourth Betfair Chase.